Hey, it's Tuesday, which means it's time for another episode of Vinyl Side Chat. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about an album that does mean a lot to me. Pulling from the shelf here, this is Paramore's Paramore.
She says don't go away under lights feel safe, 'cause she loves it when I hold her, and she asks if I could stay. Sometimes it comes to it, there's no other way. She rests her head upon my shoulder, and she asks if I could stay, if I could.
So once again, good evening. I hope you had a wonderful start to your week. It's a holiday week, to say the least, so it's always an amazing time. So thanks for coming back and tuning in with me to start another wonderful week of Vinyl Side Chat. I'm your host as always, Anthony Pagoric. I'm the frontman of the indie alt-rock pop band Park in Maine. Reminding you at this time that if you're watching, please hit that like button, show some love, any way that you want to express yourself, especially if you're excited about today's episode. So why did I decide to talk about this album? Well, this album itself was a huge step for the band and a transformation. It was also a huge step in the recording and mixing world as well, which is something I definitely want to talk to everyone about today, to kind of go off into perhaps a different direction of what I've done in previous weeks. So this is the fourth studio album from the American rock band called Paramore. It was released on April 5th, 2013 through Fueled by Ramen Records, / it was also underneath the subsidiary of Atlantic Records. And it's the first album release after the departure of co-founding members Josh and Zach Farrow, and they left the band in 2010. And this was the band's drummer and guitar player, original members of the group. So when band members leave, which you guys have to understand from personal experience, it's always a fork in the road kind of moment. It's do you keep on going? Do you change your band name? Do you write a whole new style? Do you give up? And it's very hard to validate what direction is the best thing, and so it's a lot of soul searching and everything for bands. Now with a band like Paramore, they had put out 3 previous albums. They were like these sweethearts in that whole kind of emo pop scene that was out there. Fans were, rabid and loyal, and it was like a true audience that you really couldn't just, make up how much Paramore fans hold on to this group. So they definitely had something going for them. So you don't probably, ditch the name. Haley, it was said for years that, hey, was she just going to go off and do her own thing? This was kind of her band anyways. But they decided that they were going to continue on with the original bass player, and they had a traveling guitar player that they made a full-time member. So what resulted with this then? So they lose 2 original members, and the album was described by the band as being a statement and a reintroduction of the band to the world and to themselves. And it's very evident as we get into this, talking about what was going on here. So the recording process of this album is what I want to talk about. They began recording in April of 2012 with the song Daydreaming, which for me is probably like one of my favorite songs on the entire disc. Had a wonderful video that along with it too. Really cool concept. Check that out. And then they took a break and resumed then on June 27th of that year, and then they recorded from June all the way through November of 2012. Many thought that perhaps the hook-laden, kind of punky pop direction of their first 3 albums had reached a natural end. And, maybe they needed to reinvent themselves a little, so they weren't just stuck in that genre. And I will tell you, this is going to be something that I know a lot of you might be just laying that hate, like, oh, that's the best Paramore, that's the, what it's all about. And you know what? To me, I really, really enjoy Paramore even more after this album and the last one that they've just released as well. I think these 2 albums, they're really just taking their sound and not staying rooted. All right, I don't want the early 2000s with this band anymore. They were lucky enough that they can break out of that mold. So the 3 members were really set about recasting the band's sound and dressing up the hooky pop stuff that they had in their music before, but also kind of do some quirky sounds in there, take some chances, do some different things with the arrangements that were a little bit more maybe out of left field. And to help them, they enlisted a guy by the name of Justin Mendel Johnson, or JMJ, as he's known by many. If you don't know who JMJ is, he was Beck's musical director for about a decade. Forged a reputation now over the years for being an innovative producer. He works also hand in hand with a mixing engineer that's one of my favorite artists as well of all time, Ken Andrews of the band Failure. And he, JMJ has done such other bands as Division Day, Neon Trees, and the band M83. So, as I said, JMJ was a bass player for Beck, and he also did work has been a touring member of Nine Inch Nails for years, and so he's got this wide range of music styles that's rarely seen today. And he said that he wanted the album to sound visceral and a little bit less locked down and computerized. He wanted it to sound very 1981 and not so much 2012. So with their drummer gone, they had to enlist the help of former Nine Inch Nails drummer and current Angels and Airwaves drummer Elon Rubin to record drums for the album. So the band themselves, when they did their previous album, that they were in a dark place, and they wanted this process to be lighter and just more enjoyable than what they had dealt with. And supposedly the other two members of the band had left because the band had entered a 360 contract with Atlantic Records, and they kind of thought that it was kind of like really sucking at the band's soul, and the band wasn't able to make decisions that they wanted to make. And so, by the time of that last album, they felt pressured to kind of be putting out a certain type of product. And they didn't like and the brothers especially did not like how their music careers were being handled. But this album, what does it do? They're in a better headspace. They go and record with this brand new producer, and they get 4 hit singles, 2 which went platinum, 1 which was Grammy nominated, which was called Ain't It Fun. And when creating that track, JMJ simply said from his vantage point, they transformed themselves. They renewed themselves and completely shattered everyone's expectations. And as far as Ain't It Fun, everything from the initial creation of the song by the band, right on through the production of it, from his end, were done out of pure instinct and love. It wasn't cynical, it wasn't contrived, it wasn't like they sat in with a bunch of different writers saying, hey, we got to write some kind of pop hit right now. It was simply something that they just captured. It was real for everyone, which was great for previous fans to hear that it wasn't an attempt of selling out. Fans needed to allow the band to express their influences freely and not be painting themselves in the corner. So I thought that was a really great statement by JMJ. Now, what separates a new record from other previous albums is, to a substantial degree, is the use of synthesizers. It also had a lot of interesting guitar and backing vocal parts, but the synthesizer parts that were added by JMJ and also by a guitar player, the newest guitar player Taylor, kind of added something new and different textures. They even kind of put in some percussive drum machine type things over the top of some of the other drum parts. And a lot of this is evident because that was why they wanted to work with JMJ, is because of this kind of unique characteristic that he did bring to the recording process. So now let's talk about the mixing process itself. Ken Andrews, to me, is by far one of the best mixing engineers that is out there, just on top of the game right now. He's the front man of one of my favorite bands of all time, Failure. If you haven't heard them, check it out. But Andrew, the thing about him is he is outspoken for digital audio. So much so that he was interviewed by an American TV program called Wired Science several years ago, in which his views were completely contrasted, which was with one of the heralding kings of analog, which is Steve Albini. So you have Chicago's Steve Albini, who's all about tape, all about analog, and then you got Ken Andrews, who's all about digital and what you can do with it. So why is it a huge thing? Well, most people will tell you that to record properly, still today, you need to have great recording spaces, you need to have deep mic lockers, you need to have great sounding recording consoles that capture the best sound on the way in. And most people will not argue that a lot of great recording is done on the way in. What do you capture in the moment, and how will you capture that song? That mixing is really only that last like 20% of the whole process if you do the tracking right. But the tracking thing, for years and years and years, everyone was like, you got to do it on analog console. You got to do it with all these big machines, these analog consoles and these analog pieces of gear that are out there. Now, Ken Andrews is all about mixing in the box, which means that he just puts everything inside the computer. He doesn't use this analog gear. He uses what are called plugins or emulations. And the thing with plugins or emulations is that they are a fraction of the cost of what the real units cost. You can have something like a distressor, that's a type of a compressor that's very popular out there, that you can buy an emulation of it, a computer program of it for like $250. But if you go buy the hardware piece, you're going to pay like $1,600, $1,700 for the thing. And then you need multiple of those units to get it to work on multiple tracks. Otherwise, it's going to take you a really long time to feed that through all these other individual tracks. So it's way more cost effective. And now with the way that they're writing these computer algorithms, it's very negligible. Some people argue one way or the other. But here's the point of the story, is that when the album was coming time to be mixed, JMJ gave Ken Andrews a chance to participate in the mix-off. And so what it did is that they took 4 other guys who were really great at mixing. All these guys all worked on big analog consoles, analog gear, and Ken Andrews was the only guy who worked in the box, computer only. They all were just labeled their mixes. One guy was A, B, C, D, E. And after a couple hours of listening to, actually I guess after an hour or so, it is said that the band unanimously fell in love with Mix C. Mix C was Ken Andrews. He had beaten all these guys that were mixing on analog consoles, and just beat them outright. And it was huge. It just shocked a lot of people in the industry. Like, how can this guy mix something that was better than what all this thousands of dollars of gear and all these other guys mixing in these great rooms and everything else like that? And this guy's mixing at a computer in his own home and just hands out beats all of these other mixing engineers. So, like I said, amazing thing. So once again, this album did so much for the band, but it's also cool what it did for the recording industry at the same time. So Ken Andrews lands the job. It took him 7 weeks to mix 17 songs. It was a huge album. A lot of people said that really the only bad things that you hear about this album is that it is too long. People were like, this is just so much to do, but they had so many years off. But it also allowed them to kind of get out a lot of these pop things that they love doing, and then they got more experimental in other areas as well. Let them kind of express some of that stuff that they were doing in previous albums, to say the least. So the album, like I said, had 4 singles. The first single was called Now. It was followed by Still Into You, Daydreaming, which is probably my favorite single, and then finally the Grammy-winning Best Rock Song, Ain't It Fun. So this to date is the most successful album of their career, consistently critically acclaimed. The album was loose and playful, still indulging in the band's ability to pull off mammoth arena-friendly choruses that they found on their previous emo music. And it was full of what they call power pop. So if anything, like I said, people thought it was just a little bit too long, but it allowed them to explore. For me, my favorite, like I said, single, like I said there, is Daydreaming. But my favorite song on the album is probably the last song on the album, Future, which is I think an 8 or 10 minute song. Check it out. It's awesome. And if you really like some of the older stuff that they did, that song, I think, really goes into a direction maybe that you would have thought they would have gone in, to say the least. So I want to know, what's your favorite song on the album? Let me know. Let me know if you like this album, what your thoughts are, what, like I said, your favorite Paramore album is. If you agree with me, disagree with me. Like I said, for me, this album hits on so many different levels, and I really love that they didn't paint themselves in the corner anymore. I love everything that they did beforehand. It was amazing, but I think bands do need to grow up, and they do need to change at a certain time, but do it in a natural way that is really expressing them, not a contrived way that they're sitting in a room with a bunch of writers just trying to let's get a hit to save our career. They were able to do this all on their own with the help of a great producer. They thought everything out from from the producer to end up who being their mixing engineer, and just set them up for something amazing. Local music that you need to check out, and I apologize, I got to do this. This show is not sponsored by anyone, but I would love it if someone from 18th Street was watching this. If you guys want to sponsor this show, I will gladly promote the 18th Street beer each and every week. You just tell me what you want me to promote, and I'll do it. Send me a 6-pack or something. That'd be awesome. Simple enough, but I think it's like the best beer in the area, to say the least. One of my favorites. So I'll kind of promote it for free here. Like, I'm not paid to say this or do anything else like that. But if you haven't checked out 18th Street, they are amazing. So moving right along, local music that you need to check out. So I have a good buddy of mine that's been in the local scene for many different years with different bands, different projects. His name is Frank Rosato. Frank is one of the busiest musicians that I do know in Northwest Indiana. He's a singer for a band called Low Country, which we've talked about previously on the show. He's a bassist for El Famous, another band that we've also featured on this show. And he's also the bassist of this band that I want to talk about today called Vandal Heart. All of these have released music, like I said, in the past couple of months. So he's been super busy. He's been in multiple music videos and everything for all these bands. But Vandal Heart is the one that I want to talk about today. They just released new music through Duck Phone Records. I believe it's about a week and a half old now. The song is called Awake, and they released this song and the video to go along with their single. The band is actually based out of Flint, Michigan, but also has two local musicians as part of the band. Drummer Brent Brown is from Chicago, and as I said, Frank is the bass player who's also from the Northwest Indiana region. So head over to their Facebook, find the video today. The band says they're a truly unique blend of beautiful choruses and hooks with modern hardcore elements infused with a classic R&B style of vocals. That's what you're going to get with this artist. Check them out. Let me know if you agree with how they do describe themselves. They'll be playing some of their first shows now ever up in the Detroit area, I believe. So for those of you that might be tuning in from Detroit, check out Vandal Heart. Events coming up for you. I have three that I'd like you guys to know about. One is something that we talked about already. It's called MS Sucks Singing for a Cure on December 21st at the Bottom Lounge. This was an event, once again, that is being put together primarily through the idea of Stubby from Lucky Boys Confusion. Unfortunately, if you've heard, Stubby was diagnosed with MS, and now he's thinking of ways of raising money to find a cure for this disease. From what I understand, VIP tickets are halfway gone. VIP tickets will get you into the Matinee Rock Show, which is going to be 3 bands that are going to be playing full bands during the day. It starts at 1 o'clock and goes starts at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then in between, there's going to be a area where you can go, and there'll be like food and everything for VIP and beer and stuff like that. That's all included in the package. And then later that evening, they're going to have acoustic acts coming in. Lucky Boys will be playing full band, and they'll also be playing acoustic. Later that evening, they're also going to have auction of items and everything. Like I said, later in the day for the acoustic songs, it's going to be Lucky Boys Confusion playing White Tees, Ike Riley, Swizzle Tree, and more. And actually, Park and Main, we were just notified that we are going to be actually opening up in that first matinee portion of the show when it is the full bands that will be playing. So we are going to be part of this event. For me, it really means a lot. I had my grandmother did have MS. She suffered from the disease for 33 years of her life, and I know firsthand of what the disease can do. And unfortunately, I didn't have the normal grandparent relationship because of it. And unfortunately, I say that and it's bad, but I even feel worse because I had a mother who had to grow up way sooner than she had to, taking care of a mom who had MS growing up. So she didn't get that mother-daughter relationship that you normally would have either because of this disease. So I'm so excited that we were asked to hop on this bill and be a part of this and help raise money for this. So any way that you guys can help out, please, like I said, come to the show. Go to their site where you can go to the actual event where you can just donate money right now. Like I said, VIP tickets are only $40. It gets you in for the whole day with the matinee show. It gets you to the DJ'd and refreshment area that will break up the two between the live show and the acoustic show later that evening. So like I said, they're still looking for goods and donations for MS Sucks Singing for a Cure. It's going to be at the Bottom Lounge on December 21st. No donations too big or too small. Everything is fully tax deductible. If you want to donate in any way possible, MS Sucks Singing for a Cure at gmail.com will be your contact for that. All money goes to the Accelerated Cure Project for multiple sclerosis. Next, the Chicago indie alternative band The Moose has also announced their final show of their career, unfortunately, is going to be taking place. It will be held at the Burlington Bar in Chicago, and it will feature Tiny Kingdoms, us, and another band that is going to be revealed soon. The show will take place on December 28th. That's a Saturday night. 8 o'clock doors. 8:30 show is going to kick off with us. Once again, it's at the Burlington Bar at 3424 West Fullerton Avenue in Chicago. No pre-sale tickets for this one. $10 at the door, 21 plus. So make sure you get there, because you don't want to be sitting on the outside of the bar listening on in for this one. Like I said, it's their last show. Let's send these boys out in style. The Moose, it's been great to share the stage with them in the past, and we're so lucky and grateful that they've asked us to be a part of their very last show. So let's send them off Chicago in a true memorable fashion. Finally, I know I talked to you about December 21st already and everything that's going on with MS sucks, but if you really want to catch a late night show, okay, something that's not going to start till 9 o'clock at night, so you got all day to go to MS Sucks, and then at 9 o'clock at night over at Lincoln Hall, for $15, you can see I Fight Dragons, which is this kind of Nintendo-fied pop rock coming into town. But I'm telling you about that because there's also got a great local band from Chicago that's opening up for them. It's their first time playing at Lincoln Hall, and that is Violet Crime, good friends of ours. And they'll also have Secret Bad Boys, another opening act for the show. So make your December 21st a full day of music, supporting local bands, supporting local charities, and rounding it off, like I said, with just a great day of music. Why not? So that brings us to the end of another episode. I hope that you learned something new today. I had a blast sharing the history of this album, and also giving you guys some recording knowledge as well, with not getting hopefully too technical or too nerdy for all you guys, but it's stuff that I really do truly love. So until next week, set aside some listening time. I challenge you to find some music that is new to you. It doesn't have to be something that's brand new. It can be something that was put out in 1990, 1960, whatever the case might be, but something that you've never heard before that you might have put it on the back burner. Listen to it. Let me know what you come up with and what I should check out. Maybe it's something I need to talk about on Vinyl Side Chat. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving, a great time with hopefully some family and some loved ones. Have a great time, and I will see you next week. Bye.